Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, December the 6th, 2019. It is currently 7:58 a.m. Central Time, and this is a live broadcast for the non-Catholic Catholic podcast. Now, if you're new to the non-Catholic Catholic podcast, you're probably a little confused by the title. Well, I'm the non-Catholic. However, I'm often called a Catholic by many. In fact, in the Catholic University, where I was working on a degree in Catholic theology, I had one of my professors say I was the most Catholic non-Catholic he had ever known. Okay, so I'm not a Catholic, all right, but I have had an interest in Catholic theology for most of my adult life. I disagree with many things, but I have studied Catholicism, and one of the reasons I've been so interested in Catholic theology is obviously you cannot study church history and not find yourself running into things related to Catholicism over and over and over and over again. So I wanted to know the truth about Catholicism. Now, this is very important, and one of the reasons I'm giving this background is because the background here is very important to what we're going to be talking about. One of the reasons that I became very interested in Catholic theology is not just the fact that I love church history, and when you study church history, you run into things related to Catholicism over and over and over again, is because time and time and time again, as a non-Catholic in the quote-unquote Protestant world, I would hear sermons. I would hear something on Christian radio, and someone would be speaking about Catholicism, and they would make all kinds of claims, all kinds of accusations. And not every single time, but many times, right, I would go and research it and go, wait a minute, that's not actually true. That's not actually, well, I don't know if that person actually understands Catholic theology. And, well, okay, you're saying Catholics do that. However, if you look in the Protestant world, look at how they handle this doctrine or this doctrine. Aren't they kind of saying the exact same thing, but in a different way? And I would point this out. And every time I would try to point this out, every time I would try to correct something I would see online, or I would record some kind of a podcast saying, hey, wait a minute, this church or this pastor said this about Catholicism, that's not accurate, I would receive all kinds of emails accusing me of, wait for it, you're a Catholic. You're a Catholic. You're claiming not to be a Catholic, but you're really a Catholic, and you're trying to deceive people. You're a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I'll be like, no, what I really am is someone who wants to find the truth. I want to find the truth. And I don't care who the group is. I don't care if it's Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Muslims, Buddhists, Satanists. As Christians, when we speak about those groups, we need to ensure that what we say is 100% accurate. We must speak the truth. We must speak the truth. God does not approve of lying, of deceit. And if you have to lie and deceive to attack a doctrine, a theology, then truth is not on your side. In fact, what you ultimately do is hurt your position. When you speak out against a theological system, a doctrine, a religion, whatever the case may be, if you don't have your facts straight, you give the enemy, the people that you believe are into false religion, false doctrine, you literally help their cause. You make them look like a victim. Or what you do is you cause people to go, wait a minute, I don't know if what you're saying is true. And once they realize what you're saying is not true, they're going to go look at the other side. You're going to literally drive people to the doctrine, to the theology, to the religion that you're trying to warn people against. But you're warning people against it with false information. Look, as Christians, we do not want people out there, if an atheist, agnostic, or any kind of group is speaking about Christianity, if they get their facts wrong or misrepresent Christianity, Christians get so upset. That's a misrepresentation. If the news media says something in regards to Christianity and they don't get their facts straight, we're like, fake news. It's not right. They're misrepresenting Christianity. Well, if we want to be represented, someone to represent us correctly and not lie about us, shouldn't we do the same? In fact, forget that. Let me rephrase that. We shouldn't expect lost people to represent us correctly, but as Christians, we should be expected to represent everyone fairly because we believe in truth. We believe in loving even our enemies. We believe in speaking facts. The truth should be something that Christians embrace, speak, defend, and share. The truth. All right? So that is a major part of why I became such a student of Catholicism. I got tired of what I was being told about Catholicism when I would find out that in many cases it wasn't completely accurate, or it was a misrepresentation, or it was spoken by someone who hadn't really spent the time to actually study Catholic theology. They studied people who were against Catholic theology, and they were simply parroting what they had heard and read. That's if you're going to speak against the theological system, guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to study that theological system. So the non-Catholic podcast is a podcast dedicated to, me looking into anything related into Catholicism, a journey into Catholicism, but from a non-Catholic. But the goal is to actually take a journey into all things related to Catholicism in an accurate way. I hope that makes sense. And it does, for those who are already familiar with the podcast, you've said that a million times. Well, I may have to say it a million more because I need people to understand that, especially for this live episode of the non-Catholic podcast. All right, are you ready? I woke up this morning. I opened my email, and guess what I found? I found this. The Vatican places giant statue of Molech at Colosseum entrance. The Vatican places giant statue of Molech at Colosseum entrance. Now, I was like, wait a minute. Why am I getting this today? What is going on? Why would the Vatican place a giant statue of Molech at a Colosseum entrance? Now, for those who may not be familiar with Molech and who Molech was or is or anything about Molech, let me give you some information. Molech, and now there's different ways of pronouncing it, and the name is used different ways. I'm not going to go. You got Molech, Milcom, Malcolm, I think, is another way. Molech is the biblical name of a Canaanite god associated with child sacrifice through fire or war. Now, if we go to the Bible, I have some scriptures here. I think I'm not going to read all of them. See, which one do I want to go with? Let's see. I think Jeremiah, I think it's 32:35. I think it's Jeremiah 32:35. Give me a second. I'm going to verify something. All right. I'm going to open my Bible right here. Give me 1 second. Jeremiah 32:35. I've got an article in front of me, but I did not verify if their citing of the scriptures are right. And if there's one thing I've learned is whenever you read something and it cites scripture, you better go look the scripture up yourself, because you could end up being wrong. And the last thing I would want to do is be talking about being accurate and being truthful and then give false information. So Jeremiah 32:35. I just opened my Bible. I'm looking at the King James, and we read this. And they built the high places of Bel, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to cause their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire unto Molech. All right. Which I commanded them not, neither came it into my mind that they should do this abomination to cause Judah to sin, but causing their children to pass through the fire unto Molech. Now, there's a lot of discussion and some academic writings of exactly what that involved. Did it actually involve the children being burnt? Some say it was symbolic. It was just a symbolic offering unto their child, unto Molech. But the child wasn't actually, was not actually put in fire, but the child was sacrificed or killed. There's lots of different debates about that, but many believe that the children were actually burned, and some will describe it that they had a fire that heated up this statue of Molech, this idol, and they would place the baby on the arms of Molech, which would be, just hot with because the idol had been heated up with fire, and the baby would burn. That's how I've heard it described. Again, I don't know if that's accurate. I've read other academic journals that say, well, we don't know if that's accurate. But the point is, it's a Canaanite. Let me go back and read that initial description of Molech. Clearly, it's a false god. It's an idol. Clearly, children were offered or sacrificed somehow to it. Molech is the biblical name of the Canaanite god associated with child sacrifice through fire or war. All right? So, this god of Molech. Now, let's go back to what I saw in my email. The Vatican places giant statue of Molech at Colosseum entrance. All right, now, if that's true, you're thinking, wait a minute, what is the Vatican doing? Why would they place this? And the Colosseum, a place where many Christians were martyred, and a lot of other people were used as entertainment to be, and when they said the Colosseum, obviously the Colosseum in Rome, okay. This Colosseum was a place of people being killed for entertainment. Christians were martyred there, all right? So why would you put a god at the entrance, a false god that was associated with children being sacrificed to it? What are you trying to accomplish, all right? So I saw this and immediately was like, well, wait a minute. First question. Is this true? Is this true? So this is what we're going to do this morning. Now, the source for this is pulpitandpen.org. Pulpitandpen.org. They have, I will argue that there's been many times they've posted stuff and people have come back and said, I don't know if you have your facts straight. I don't have your facts straight. So already I am not, just because of the source of this, I'm already questioning it. So when I started reading, I was looking for links to other sources. Give me some other information to find out exactly what is going on. But here is how we're going to do this. I'm going to read a lot of information here. I have got probably, I don't know how many tabs open here on my iPad. Now, I hope that while I'm going through some of this information, nothing happens to our live feed. If it does, I apologize. But I'm going to do my best here to give us some information. I am going to challenge you, the listener, to do your own research. Underneath this article, under the comments, everyone's debating with everyone. You've got one side who basically the Vatican is, the seat of Antichrist. It's of Satan. It's evil. They're idol worshipers. This is, we shouldn't be surprised or shocked by this. This is absolutely true. And you've got other individuals going, wait a minute. Did the Vatican place it there? Or did someone else place it there? Who has control over the Colosseum? I saw plenty of comments where there's debate. The Catholic Church, the Vatican controls the Colosseum. So anything placed there, can only be placed there by the approval and authority of the Vatican. So even if they didn't place it there, they approved it. Others were like, no, the Colosseum is not owned by the Vatican. It's not. It's owned by the secular government there, not the Vatican. Others were like, no, that's not true. Now, all the sides were making their argument. No one really presented any solid information. Now, someone posted in the comments underneath the article we're about to look at that they lived there. And they said, no, the Vatican does not own the Colosseum or control the Colosseum. Now, that's someone who lives there. I would assume they know. But they still did not post a link to 100%, resolve the problem. Now, I could look it up, but I want I want other people to look things up. And here's the reason why. I want you to learn that, especially in 2019, and I've been saying this for years, you have to learn to research and you have to get your information from multiple sources. People get a way of thinking. Now, it doesn't matter what the subject is. Politics, it could be even vaccines, it doesn't matter. And they will only go to sites that support their view. They won't look at the research, academic journals, or anything else that contradicts their view. Well, once you get into a way of thinking, you get into this kind of echo chamber. I believe a certain way. I'm only going to look at information that supports what I think. Therefore, what I think is right. You can't live your life that way. If you think a certain way, if you believe something to be true, you have to look to see if there's a counter argument and what evidence they present, because you may need to change your view. I can't stand when people do that. You're like, hey, this is right and this is wrong. Okay, where'd you get your information? And they send you a link to a YouTube video. And you're like, who's the person on YouTube? Who made this video? And then you'll find out that person is associated with the movement or with the viewpoint that this person's already stating. So in other words, they went and found someone who agreed with them and they're quoting that as evidence. Now, are there two sides to the story? Let's look at the evidence for both sides and try to see where the truth is. You have to learn to do that, all right? So we're going to work through this. I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can. Let me warn you. Some of these articles have lots of, it looks like Latin phrases, Latin. And I'm going to do my best to bring some of this over into English, okay? Even some of the English I may mispronounce because you're speaking of some ancient cities, ancient situations, but I'm gonna do my best to try to give you the information, and anything I mispronounce, I apologize, but I want you to see what is going on, because this kind of thing is, I'll make sure you understand this. This is not about pulpit and pen. This is not even about this particular article. This is just a symptom of a larger problem. Misinformation, false information, and when the world does it, it bothers me enough. But when Christians do it, I absolutely get furious. Because if Christianity can't speak the truth, then what's the point? We have to have our facts straight. All right, so here we go. Headline: The Vatican places giant statue of Molech at Colosseum entrance. The Roman Colosseum is a World Heritage Site. I'll stop right there. If it's a World Heritage Site, does that give us a clue of possibly who controls it or who owns it? Don't know. It's a World Heritage Site, and it is listed among the new 7 wonders of the world. It is the most visited tourist destination in the world. And now, at the grand entrance to the Colosseum, rests a statue of the Canaanite deity that is associated heavily with child sacrifice. Now, I don't know if it's the most visited tourist destination in the world. They do have a link that seems to try to verify that. All right, so maybe they have their facts straight here. All right, we do agree it's a Canaanite god. We do agree that it's associated heavily with child sacrifice. So far, so good. The Colosseum was once a place that saw Christians fed to the lions, killed by gladiators, or rolled into pitch and set on fire as torches. The Colosseum now seems to have erected Molech as its god. Now, wait a minute. Now, we just jumped. There is a statue of Molech put there, but did they put there to erect it as it's the god of the Colosseum? It's the god of this area. Is that why it was put there? See, that now we went from trying to give us some facts to now jumping to an opinion. Why is it there? Let's continue. The press release about the giant Molech, sometimes spelled Moloch, all right, sometimes spelled that way. The press release about the giant Molech, idol says, and they've got a quote from the press release. a reconstruction of the terrible deity Molech linked to the Phoenician and Carthaginian religions will be stationed at the entrance to the Colosseum to welcome visitors to the exhibition. All right? I don't know exactly what the point is there. Okay, they're acknowledging Molech was a terrible deity, right? So obviously they're not saying it was a good thing. So are they placing it there to be the god of the Colosseum, or are they placing it there with acknowledgement that it was a terrible deity? So why is it there? I continue. The article continues. Called, and they have in quotes, art, quote unquote art. Now, when it gets to the subject of art and Christians, I could do a couple of podcasts there. Christians and their handling of art has always driven me crazy. I guess if it's art that agrees with Christianity, then it's art, and if it's doesn't agree with Christianity, then it's quote unquote art. Like I don't know. I'm not a fan of the way Christians sometimes handle it, but that's okay. All right, that's a whole different discussion. Called art. It is unclear how long the exhibit will stay at the Colosseum. Interestingly, the organizers acknowledge that Molech is a terrible deity. Now, I don't know how they can say that it's unclear how long the exhibit will be there. Because if I pull up, I've got an article here from, I'll just spell it, PARCOLOSSEO.IT. And this looks like it's a magazine dedicated to archaeology and archaeological finds, archaeological discoveries, different points in history. And they have an announcement in regards to this exhibit at the Colosseum. All right. Now, I'm going to read a little bit from this announcement, okay? The history and culture of one of the most powerful and fascinating cities of the ancient Mediterranean is on display from September the 27th, right, to 29 March 2020. With the exhibition, and they've got it, I think, in Italian here, but I think the English translation is Carthago, the Immortal Myth. All right? Carthago, the Immortal Myth. The Colosseum, the Temple of Romulus, and the Imperial Ramp at the Roman Forum will all host extraordinary materials on loan from national archaeological museums in Italy and abroad, including the Carthage National Museum, and they name a number of other ones. The large-scale exhibition is curated by, and they give the name of the individual, who's a director of the Parco Archeologico del Colosseo, who is also in charge of the international coordination together with, and they name a number of individuals. Now, please note, the large-scale exhibition is curated, and they give the name of this person, who's a director of archaeology, with all these other people. Guess what is not named here? The Vatican is not named. Pope Francis is not named. No one associated with the Vatican seems to be named here. I mean, I'd have to look up each one of these names, but that it doesn't. I mean, and what we find out here is this is an archaeological exhibit. They've borrowed materials from national archaeological museums. They've brought them together to give us the history and culture of one of the most powerful and fascinating cities of the ancient Mediterranean. And it's going to be on display from 27 September to 29 March 2020. And it's called Carthago, the Immortal Myth. This is an archaeological exhibit to let you see different artifacts that show you the history of a particular city in a particular region at a particular time. It's not making a religious claim of any kind. It's saying, here is an exhibit. And here's I'm literally reading the exact press release. And if you go down, remember they quoted from the press release a reconstruction of the terrible deity Moloch, linked to Phoenician and Carthaginian religions. Remember they gave that in the press release? Well, guess what? This is that press release. At the same time, they report they don't know how long it's going to be there. It's at the beginning of the press release. They act like they don't know why it's there. It's explained in the press release. They take one quote from the press release because it calls it a terrible deity. They emphasize that. They say that now this has been set up as the God of the Colosseum. But the press release literally tells you why it is there. Okay, this whole thing just makes no sense. They go on to say, Molech has been associated with human abortion for thousands of years. The name Molech is believed to have originated from the Phoenician, it looks like M-I-L-K, I guess milk, which referred to a type of sacrifice made to confirm or acquit a vow. Along with ritual prostitution, this deity required death of babies to appease him. The Bible warned that the Israelites repeatedly to have nothing to do with Molech. You shall not give any of your children to offer them to Molech, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. Leviticus 18:21. All right. Molech has been installed in the highest and most well-traveled places on earth, the Roman Colosseum. Now, they talk about the Vatican. This is what they say. The Vatican has ownership and authority over the Colosseum and all of its displays, exhibits, and functions. Now, if, let's say the Vatican does, let's agree with, the Vatican does have authority over it. Let's say that's true. They're simply setting up an archaeological exhibit so that people can see the history of what happens. And if you go back to the press release, here we go, the press release, the exhibition promoted by Parco Archeologico del Coloseo and the organization of Electia features precious reconstructions and multimedia installations side by side with never before displayed artifacts, all the result of the research campaign conducted by, and they name all the different people who are involved in it. Our goal is to help familiarize the public with the series of historical events that unite the two great powers of the ancient world, Carthage and Rome. Now, I want to make this very clear. This is a historical presentation to say this is what happened. It's not saying, hey, worship the god Molech. The god Molech is now the god of the Colosseum. The Vatican wants you to now worship Molech. We are idolaters. That's not what's going on here. This is a massive misrepresentation. So even if the Vatican is in charge, the people involved in this, the Vatican is not listed there. But even if they are, it's just simply setting up a historical display so that you can see. And please note, it's not only at the Colosseum. It's at a number of other sites according to the press release. Let me go back here. Let's name all the places. It's going to be located at the Colosseum, the Temple of Romulus, Romulus. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, and the Imperial Ramp at the Roman Forum. So it's going to be the exhibit's going to be in a number of locations. And I'm assuming what you can do is you can purchase a ticket to go to these exhibits or see these exhibits, and you're getting a history of something that, you know, a lot of people may not understand or may not know. And it's being viewed that, hey, the Vatican set this up. The Vatican did this. And this is what they say. The Vatican has owned and operated the Colosseum since the Middle Ages when it took control of the facility. All right. Pope Benedict declared it a sacred site. They got a little thing here. They have a sign here that's supposedly placed there by Pope Benedict, not Pope Benedict the 16th. I think there's a Pope. I don't know which one. They've got a number of statements here. And supposedly the sign reads, they have a picture of the sign. It was placed there in 1783, clearly not Pope Benedict XVI, by the Vatican. It says, the amphitheater, once consecrated to triumphs, entertainments, and the impious worship of pagan gods, is now dedicated to the sufferings of the martyrs, is purified from impious superstitions. All right, now, Okay, so they place that there. What control do they have? All right, again, even if they have control, and again, we would have to research this, and I would challenge anyone to research this. So this is what I'll say. Let's do a couple of things. Number one, who literally controls the Colosseum, the Roman Colosseum? Who controls it? Who can determine what is placed there or what is not placed there? Because obviously these other organizations are not part of the Vatican. So did they get Vatican approval to put it there? Let's say we just need to determine the facts there. Who controls it? Who can determine what can be displayed at the Colosseum? So that's number one. Who controls it? Number two, even if it's controlled by the Vatican, even if that's true, isn't this just an archaeological exhibit so that people can hear and see the history of a particular area, as the press release clearly outlines the purpose? The press release itself says Molech is a terrible deity. There's nothing there's nothing in the press release that says, hey, this is the God of the Colosseum or this is there to worship. It's there to see what has happened. It's to demonstrate something. And then you learn about it, and then you can determine the goodness or that's how an exhibit is set up. It's to show you what occurred. So, I don't know. Obviously, this god of Molech was not set up in the Vatican. Wasn't set up in a church. Set up at the Colosseum, a historical site. A archaeological, historical display. Now, I know I'm going to get 900 emails saying you're defending the Catholic Church. We're talking about this particular case. And whenever I do this, then I'll get accused of being a Catholic. And it's just crazy that's what people want to run to. I'm just trying to find out the truth. They talk about a press release. I go look at the press release. The press release literally gives me the dates, tells me exactly what's going on, what happened, and it doesn't seem to be some grand conspiracy to get everyone to become idol worshipers or some grand scheme to demonstrate that actually the Catholic Church is a pagan deity worshiping, church. So you do your research. Let me know what you find. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. I know some of you are like, well, why don't you answer these questions? Because I want you to be a part of the research, because you need to learn to do this. All right? We have to learn to look into this. So the first person who emails me at newsif@yahoo.com and tells me, and I need documented source, right? Who owns it? Who controls it? Who determines what goes there? And even if we determine it is the Vatican, we will come back and make that point very clear. But if it isn't, we'll make that point very clear. But even if it is, this is being turned into something that it is not. I think this is simply a historical, archaeological, like going to a museum to see the history of the Canaanite or of that region, Mesopotamia, Canaan. If we go and look at that a museum display, a museum exhibit of that area, we're going to see idols, false gods, and all the different things. If you go and go to a display of any, I've gone to some art exhibits of Native America, of Native Americans, and you'll get certain things of they worship this or they worship that, or a display of this or a display of that, and you're like, okay. Is that setting it up as a god? No, it's just showing me the religious nature of a particular people group at a particular time. I'm just baffled that this is being set up like some, evil thing that the Vatican did. So let me know what you discover. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com. I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. Pulpit and Pen does not have far reach, trust me. They're not like a massive site, but they are on social media. People will pick it up, and then they send it out. The first comment under this, I think, on Twitter on Pulpit and Pen was basically, acknowledging that what they were saying is true. And, I think they said something, Jesus is still on the throne. Hey, in spite of this horrible idolatry, Jesus is still on the throne. And I'm like, it's an art exhibit. It's a historic archaeological exhibit. Come on. All right. If I'm wrong on this, I will definitely correct myself. But I'm literally looking at the press release. I'm literally looking at it. The press release that they talked about, but they didn't give us all that information. They took one quote from the press release, a terrible deity. Well, that's not how you do reporting. All right, I'll stop there. Everyone have a great day. Remember, truth, truth, truth. That is what we should care about. God bless.